Hello, and welcome to this month's Coffee with a Consultant. My name is Melanie Lambert. I am Managing Director of Just Right Grants. We are a virtual grant writing company, and we help nonprofit organizations across the U.S. to save time, spend less, and raise more with affordable grant writing. And one of the ways that I want to help you save time, spend less, and raise more is by providing resources like this, like our Coffee with a Consultant event, and sharing with you some insight that I've learned over the years as a grant writer and as a nonprofit fundraising professional. A lot of what we share are things that are learned over time and with experience. And so, if I can be helpful to you and to cut down a little bit on that time and experience requirement for you, that's my goal with our Coffee with a Consultant event. So, welcome to this month's edition. Today, we're going to be talking about 8 reasons your grant request didn't get funded. But first and foremost, I hope everyone has your own personal version of human fuel. I have got my just regular old cup of Joe this morning with one of my favorite cups. I'm a baseball mom. My boys are baseball just nuts. We play baseball, watch baseball, talk baseball. So it's one of my favorite cups, but just a plain old cup of Joe this morning. I was running a little late. I wanted to get something fancier, but maybe I'll treat myself on the way home. But if you can help me know that the chat function is working and let me know either where you're joining us from this morning or what your favorite human fuel is, what you're drinking this morning, and our coffee date here live streaming. I would love to see that. I love to see everybody's kind of combinations of things. Particularly, I love coffee. I don't drink tea very often, but I love to know all the different combinations of things that you like and think, maybe I'll try that. So if you'll let me know in the chat, and if you're not a coffee or tea drinker, you're just joining us to get the grant writing goods, let me know where you're joining us from. I'm in Northwest Georgia. Today, I'm actually using a remote workspace in our public library, which is really nice. So that's looks a little bit different, but it's quiet, and I'm really enjoying this. So we're going to go ahead and jump on in. Hi, Sierra from Marshfield, Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for using the chat function. It's good to have you here, and I hope what I share is helpful for you. So we're going to jump right in. 8 reasons your grant request didn't get funded. Preparing and submitting a grant application is no small feat. It's a lot of work. You have to invest time and resources into it. And in a landscape and an industry where this might come as a shock, but only about 20% of grant applications get funded, you really need to be prepared for those declines. But are there things that you are doing or aren't doing that may be leading to a higher rate of declines? That when you think about it, that's only 2 out of every 10 you submit. That's how competitive grant writing is right now. So yes, you're going to get declines. That's just the nature of it. And you're going to get more declines and you get awards. But can you tweak some things that might help you get your foot in the door with those funders? Hi, Liz. Thanks for joining me. Always at least 1 cup of coffee. Yes, I'm trying to scale mine down, but that hasn't been overly successful. So I'm right there with you. So, there's a lot of elements that go into a grant application, and a lot of things that you can control and a lot of things you can't control. Today, we're going to talk about the things that you can control. So one of the first reasons why your grant proposal might not have gotten funded is you didn't follow the directions. And that can seem really basic. But if you're submitting dozens of applications over the course of a year, it can get really easy to get into a rhythm and you lose sight of some of the specific requirements of those funders. So some of those things that tend to get overlooked that I hear a lot from grant administrators is the number of copies of the application. If you're mailing a copy, sometimes they ask for more than one, particularly smaller foundations may ask for more than 1 copy. They may ask for them stapled or unstapled, just little things like that you may not know at what level that funder may say, they didn't follow this direction and we're not going to continue reading this one. So you just want to make sure that that's not even an option on the table. You followed all of the directions. Might be limits. There might be character counts, page limits, word counts. They might want a signature from a different executive. You might be used to sending a signed letter from your executive director. Maybe they want it signed by your director of development. So just little things like that that you need to pay attention to as you're submitting those applications. The second thing that might be preventing you from getting funded is the deadline isn't what you think. So in most cases, a funder will tell you the deadline, and in most cases, that means an in-hand deadline. So if they say June 30th, they have to have that application in hand on June 30th, or it's not going to be considered in this grant cycle. In some cases, that can be a postmark deadline. So you want to make sure that you check on that. That means that as long as your application is postmarked by that date, they will still accept it. So you have to plan accordingly for that. If it's an in-hand date, obviously you'll want to make your trip to the post office a little bit earlier than that to make sure that it arrives on time. And I always check with whoever's working there to make sure that it's going to be there by the day if we're running real close to the deadline. And for online applications, which we're moving into a time when most applications are online, but for online applications, you need to be conscious of the deadline time. So they may say June 30th, but the deadline might be midnight. The deadline might be 5 o'clock. The deadline might be 5 o'clock in another time zone. So being conscious of that and being aware of that as you plan to move forward is really important. The next reason why your grant may not have gotten funded is that you didn't make a strong enough case. So, if you're a foundation and you get lots of applications, and let's say you fund organizations that are helping people that are experiencing homelessness, that's a big issue in our country. So there's a lot of nonprofits associated with it. So let's say you get dozens of those applications. You want to make sure that your application does not get lost in the crowd. Right? You want to make sure that you stand out, and you do that by having a strong case for support. So you need to demonstrate to that grantor why your program is necessary, how their funds will increase its impact, and what will happen if that grant isn't funded. That's kind of a case for support in a nutshell. And if any of the things I'm sharing with you here today would be helpful for us to elaborate on further in a future Coffee with a Consultant, drop that in the chat, send me an email and say, hey, can we do one about case for support? Can we do one about, talking to a grant, different things, different elements that may be helpful for you? Let me know. So another reason you didn't do your researching grant funders goes a lot further than just looking up their online profile on your favorite grant research database. You need to be reviewing their IRS Form 990 as well, and that can give you a better grasp of the types of organizations that they fund, the types of programs they fund, as well as the average grant amount. So you can look at that and make a better judgment if you're not able to connect with a grant administrator about the amount of money that you should be requesting. You don't ever want to come into an organization and say, hey, we need $1 million from you, and their average grant amount is $10,000. That's not something you want. You don't want to be in that situation, and you don't want to put them in that situation. It just shows to them that you didn't do your homework to know that they don't fund at that level. So another reason that your organization's proposal may not have gotten funded is that you made errors in your proposal. And again, this is very basic, but typographical errors or grammatical errors could really seal your fate. It's easy to do what I call blind proofreading. And after you've read your narrative or your application so many times, you don't see those errors anymore. Your eyes glaze over them because your brain knows what it wanted to say. So it's really important to proofread things multiple times. If you can, have somebody else proofread it for you, and that's time well spent. If you draft a lot of content, I highly recommend using platforms like Grammarly that automatically goes in and will flag things for you and say, hey, are you missing a comma here? Hey, are you missing a word? Particularly if you're using content over and over again and you're copying and pasting from yourself. It can be really easy to move quickly and to copy something and maybe forget to copy the period. Or if you're copying a section of a paragraph, maybe the part that you did, you forget to do the introduction of your sentence there. So platforms like Grammarly can catch that for you. They're never going to replace human aspect of it. But I notice things too with grammatical rules that I might be like, do I need a comma there or not? Grammarly will tell me. So it's helpful. Another reason why you might not have gotten funded is you relied too heavily on stories or too heavily on data. So grantors want to see that you've got a good balance between those two. So if you include only heartfelt stories, you're not painting the picture for the funder of why your cause and your mission is needed in the community. You need to back that up with data. And the reverse is true too. If you rely too heavily on data, then you're not able to pull at the first heartstrings. And that's important, right? We want to connect with them on a human level, but we also need to back that up. We need to show that there's a reason that you exist and that you meet a very distinct need in your community. So you do that with a combination of those two. And finding that balance will make your application so much stronger and will increase your likelihood of success. Next, your budget didn't make sense. So nonprofits often wait till the last minute to do budgets, and I am always singing the song that it should be the first thing you do. You should first and foremost always have a project budget for every project that your organization is working on. You should have an organizational budget, and then you need to have a project budget. And that just needs to be part of your budgeting process for the nonprofit in general, whether you're submitting grant applications or not. And if you do that, then you save yourself some steps later. But oftentimes, grant funders will want you to insert your budget details into their own template. So you need to be prepared for that. That can take time. They might ask for things that you don't necessarily track or have available on your budget that you've already produced. So you may need to spend some time pulling that information together. And because that can take time, you don't want to be scrambling right before the deadline to get that done. So your budget may change over time, and that's likely that through the year, as you are implementing your program, that's going to change. And as you're raising funds, as money comes in, obviously your income is going to change. But knowing what your expenses and your income are, what you can expect, shows that you're being consistent, and it shows a grantor that you can effectively and efficiently manage funds and ultimately a future funded grant. So last but certainly not least, and probably should have been the first thing we talked about, reason why your grant may not have gotten funded is that your organization is not grant ready. We talk about this a lot. We recommend, based on my experience in the grant writing world and from feedback from grant administrators, that new nonprofits have at least 2 to 3 years of program work, direct mission work, boots on the ground, not planning, not building your programs, actually doing the work. That gives you the opportunity to gather data, to gather those stories that you need, to have revenue streams other than grants. That's really important. You may feel like you're bootstrapping it a little bit, and that's common for new nonprofits. But looking at multiple fundraising revenue streams so that you can prove to that organization that you can manage funds, that you know how to fundraise, you know how to effectively spend that money and account for that money, is really important in the grand scheme of grant writing and the level of competitiveness we're working with. Think back to that 20% number. That's 20% across the board. That's huge nonprofits doing amazing work with everything going right, professional grant writers, down to smaller nonprofits that are a few years in. So, if you're competing with those organizations, you need to be able to show that. There are funds available for new nonprofits, as startup funds, capacity building funds. Those are, few and far between. Funders really look at you as a financial investment, and you have to be able to prove that you're not going to disappear when they make that grant award, and that you can sustain yourself beyond that. So it's important to be grant ready. We've got a lot of resources that can help you on our blog and in our online store. There's a QR code there on the screen for you to access our online store that can help you get grant ready. Lists of things that grant ready nonprofits have: an active board, a solidified mission statement. You've got your financials in order. There's just a ton of things that can help you before you invest time and resources into grant writing, because you want to be as competitive as you can, considering what we're looking at as far as a return rate goes. So I don't want to be negative Nancy today and all the bad things that can go, if your proposal didn't get funded, but I hope that this has been helpful for you. And that you can use some of the resources that I shared today and some of the insight that I shared to hopefully change course a bit and get some grant awards and not as many declines, and to just consider these things as you're working on your applications, to keep them in mind and hopefully be more effective in your grant writing endeavors. So I appreciate you all so much for joining me today. If you've got questions, again, you can drop them in the chat, or my email address is right there. I'm always available to answer those questions. And please follow us on social media. Sign up for our e-newsletter at justrightgrants.com, and we will share updates on the next Coffee with a Consultant event, as well as live webinars that we host and other resources that we will have coming out here in the summer. And I appreciate your time so much and hope you have a great day. Enjoy your coffee.